I'm going to explain what probability is and how you work it out in a simple situation. First of all, probability is the likelihood or the chances of a particular event taking place. Now, you can only work out the probability exactly for a simple situation which is well defined. What I mean is a situation such as when you toss a coin. It has a heads, it has a tails, and each face has an equal chance of landing up. Another common situation is a die, plural dice. If you roll a die, a normal die has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or a 6 on the 6 faces, and each face has an equal chance of landing up if it's what we call a fair die. Now, when you roll the die, you can predict the probability of landing, let's say, a 6, because it's a well-defined situation and each of the 6 faces has an equal chance of landing up. Another common situation used for probability is a spinner. A spinner meaning a spinning top, and you can make a spinning top with any number of edges that you want to suit the situation, and each edge would be equally long, and then you can predict, well, when it stops, which edge will it land on. Another common, clearly defined situation is colored marbles or balls in a bag. So you might put, let's say, some blue marbles, green marbles, red marbles in a bag, and you know how many of each color there are, and therefore you know what the total number of marbles is, and you pick out a marble at random. What are the chances that it was a green one? That's a very clearly defined and simple situation. And another common one is a deck of playing cards, which normally has 52 cards in it. You have you have clubs, spades, hearts and diamonds. And there are 13 cards in each suit. You get ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen and king. And based upon that structure, you can be asked a great variety of questions on probability. Now, all of those are clearly defined situations where you can work out exact probabilities. Okay, so an example of a situation where you can't work out an exact probability is the chances of it raining tomorrow, or how many hours of sunshine you're going to get. You can make an estimate, but you can't do it as an exact number. And the reason why for those kind of events or any future event in your life you can't make an exact probability is because they are complicated events and they depend on many variables. Variables are things that can vary, things that influence the outcome that we're talking about. So only for simple, clearly defined situations can you work out the exact probability. Now let's see how we actually do it. Let's take the situation of a die. A die has 6 faces. Now supposing we wish to work out the probability that when you roll this die, it lands on a 2. So the probability of it landing on 2 or 2 dots. We would work it out as a vulgar fraction. Probabilities are worked out as vulgar fractions. I'll show you why. Well, the denominator is the first thing you should work out. And the denominator is how many equally likely things are possible. Well, on a die, if it has 6 faces, then there are 6 equally likely things possible. So for a normal 6-face die, the denominator will always be 6 because it's determined by the situation, the physical situation. Now the numerator is the thing you have to think about. It's how many of those 6 things are that event. Well, it's obvious. There is only 1 2 on a normal die. So that event can only happen in one way. So the numerator has to be 1. Just to emphasize that, the denominator is determined by the situation or the physical object, in the case of a die, a bag of marbles, deck of cards, etc., or a spinner. The numerator is how many ways out of those 6 possibilities the event we're talking about, the event whose probability we're working out, how many ways that event could take place out of these 6. let's take another event. Let's suppose now we wish to work out not the probability of landing on a 2, but let's say the probability of landing on an odd number when you roll this die. So probability of odd. Well, 6-faced die, therefore the denominator is 6. Now the numerator this time is going to be 3, because there are 3 ways to land on an odd number. You could land on a 1, a 3, or a 5. So out of these 6 equally likely possible events, 3 are the event that we're talking about. So the probability of landing an odd number is 3 out of 6. Now we would normally reduce this to a half. We would normally reduce it to its lowest terms or simplify it. Now probability of half is often expressed in different ways, different formats. Of course, it can be expressed as a decimal fraction rather than a vulgar fraction. So although probabilities are worked out as vulgar fractions, they can be expressed in other formats. So this one can be written as 0.5 or 50%. Now this particular probability, half, can also be said as 50-50. Sometimes it's said as a ratio 50-50. Or even in words, we might call that an even chance. So there's an even chance of landing an odd number. Let's take another probability to try and illustrate this formula. The probability of landing, let's do something slightly different now. So a little twist there, of not landing on a 4. The probability of not landing on a 4. Well, the denominator is still 6 because we're talking about rolling a normal 6-faced die. Now you have to think, oh, how many ways can this particular event happen that we don't get a 4, that it is not 4? Well, that's easy because there are 6 different faces, one of which is a 4. So there are 5 faces which are not a 4. So there are 5 ways that we can get the event we're talking about, i.e. not a 4. So the numerator in this case, i.e. that how many ways that event can happen, is 5 ways. Now, that is how you work out a probability, and you can apply the same reasoning to any clearly defined situation where we can work out the exact probability. But just from this brief explanation, you can already see that all probabilities have to be between 0 and 1. Because, for example, if I wanted to work out the probability of landing a 9 when I roll a normal 6-faced die, well, when I write this formula, I say, well, there are 6 equally likely things possible, and if this was a 9, the probability of 9, well, there are no ways, 0 ways for a 9 to occur. Therefore, the probability of 9 is going to be 0. It cannot be a negative amount. 0 is the least that a probability can be. Now, supposing we take at the opposite extreme, what is the probability when you roll a normal 6-faced die that you get a number between 1 and 6? Well, you'd say, oh, number between 1 and 6. Well, there are 6 ways that can happen out of 6, so the probability is 1. So the maximum probability of any event is 1. So minimum 0, maximum 1. So all probabilities are from 0 to 1. 0 means it is impossible. 1 means absolutely certain. And most probabilities fall somewhere in between the two extremes.